Welcome one more day to Space and Harmonia. I hope you found certain serenity within yourself listening to this piece of music, which I composed about 10 years ago, and it took me time to develop the lyrics because I had in mind the journey of Adam and the fall of intelligence into planetary life. And that particular piece of music is challenging because it's difficult to keep a steady tempo because it moves you towards a sense of infinity. It has a certain emotion of immensity and force. So it's very complicated to stay with a steady rhythm. But the idea is to find serenity, stillness in movement, because that's related to the true magnetic light. And precisely, I'm going to use the theme of the fall of Adam to introduce a very important distinction. Actually, one of the listeners, Kyle Macias, with which I sometimes speak in the program All Seeing One, suggested me to speak about the difference between the true light of the universal Messiah and the light of Lucifer. And precisely the other day, a listener from the north of Spain in Galicia sent me 2 videos and asked me for my view on them, and they were about the history of Lucifer. And the author suggested that there are 2 types of Lucifer, one that fell and the other that is raised. And he identified that Lucifer with Christ, since in Revelation 22, the book of Revelation, chapter 22, it is said, I, Jesus, am the root and offspring and bright and morning star. So many are identifying the Messiah with the ascended Lucifer, so to say. But this is a very old idea, and we have to understand what that is, because there is also a very important distinction that many are bypassing. It's not the same to be speaking about the universal magnetic light that comes from the uncontaminated source, the Father of Lights, and the light that comes from the stars and becomes somehow a vehicle for primordial light. I think so far it should be clear to us that most of the conflicts that we are experiencing on Earth come from certain wisdom that was implanted into what we could call animal humanity. And then there was a mixture between the wisdom from the stars and animal life, so to say. And this was the origin of the so-called 4 horses of the apocalypse, which we could identify as religion, politics, science, and economy, even though we have to distinguish between certain types of science and economy, because obviously we need an exact knowing about the world and ourselves. We can have a science based on conscience. Conscience in Hebrew would be translated as Da'at Elyon, which is a very precise description for exact knowing, science. And we also need an economy, an art of distribution, the art of using our energies wisely without squandering them. That is economy, which is very different from Luciferian economy, in which a few get all the richness, so to say, because they are selfish. They feel themselves lacking something, so they have to take control over others because they are weak in heart and mind. but they are strong in the science based on the tree of knowledge of good and bad, which is false science, Luciferian science. And the problem of identifying the Messiah with the ascended Lucifer is that this can lead to the same mistake that made Luciferian beings fall, which is the desire to become a sort of god, a ruler over others, because he's enlightened and has more wisdom. This is basically the problem. And now I'm going to move into another angle to see if I can get more light. The sun is right in front of me, it's setting. The birds are singing along, so let's continue. That situation I was mentioning emerged on the Earth since the very first time certain intelligences decided to implant a higher intelligence on animal humanity so that humanity could produce certain energies. We hear about this in the Sumerian myth Atrahasis, where certain human gods went on a strike, they didn't want to work, and a chief ruler god, the lord of the earth known as Enki, suggested to mix up their own royal DNA, so to say, with a species from the earth. And I don't think they made bodies in the sense of experimenting in a lab, modifying the DNA as many human scientists do today. And those engineers didn't create humanity. I would say they established the conditions on which certain species that were more intelligent could emerge. And they basically gave humanity the possibility of receiving astral fire, astral intelligence, which was in antiquity known as phosphorus. And it was associated with Venus, the planet Venus, and also with the so-called carrier of light, Luciferus in Latin. We hear about that nature in Isaiah 14. Now, the astral intelligence, which was imprinted by Lord Enki, was also known as Prometheus, that stole the fire to the gods and gave it to humanity. And in both myths, in Sumerian myth and Greek myth, this action enraged other architects. Enki was the brother of Enlil, and Enlil didn't want humanity to reproduce or to make noise, and didn't like very much the idea of Enki in that mythology. And Prometheus enraged Zeus, who enchained him to a rock, condemning Prometheus to live on material conditions. And I think this is a reference to the fire from the stars that somehow is absorbed by humanity and becomes a second spiritual nature, which can evolve or devolve. And this was associated to the afternoon star, Venus, or the bright morning star, which is Venus on the morning. The Romans knew it as Vesperus on the afternoon and Phosphorus on the morning. And we find a very good example of the first in Isaiah 14, where Luciferus, Helel ben Shahar in Hebrew, which means shining son of the morning, says, I will ascend to heaven, I will establish my throne, I will sit among the congregation of the Elohim, the gods, I will go above the clouds with technology, and I shall be like the Most High. Those are the 5 I shall be, I will be, which represent astral pride, which is the characteristic of Luciferian nature. And this is because this nature is incomplete, it's always wishing for something else, because it comes from the stars, and the stars are not the true magnetic light, they are electromagnetic light, which is fragmented in quanta packages of energy, even though it comes in waves of electromagnetic energy, but it's basically fragmented. And some say that Lucifer learned the lesson and now is evolving, that humanity, even though has Luciferian nature, can become God after learning the lesson. But I think this is a mistake, because the carrier of light has that function, to carry light. It's not the true light. And the problem comes from misinterpreting certain passages in the book of Revelation especially. Actually, revelation means to veil again, because re indicates a repetition, and veil is something that covers the truth, whereas the truth is unveiling. So right now we have to unveil what is taking place. In chapter 22 of the book of Apocalypse, the book of Revelation, we read, I, Jesus, am the root and offspring of David, the bright and morning star. And many say this is Lucifer ascending. Madame Blavatsky, which was the founder of Theosophy, said that Christos, is Lucifer. And this idea has been placed as the center of many theories, many spiritualities, which have an ascensional characteristic. They believe human beings can evolve and become a sort of God, or even the absolute. But this is not possible, because the absolute is complete from the beginning, and we can certainly evolve, but what evolves is an essence that comes from the absolute, not from the stars. It's not astral fire. In any case, the Luciferian nature is the carrier, and it must be humble in order to be reintegrated into the tree of life. And we can see how even Master Yeshua was teaching about this when he was approached by the Pharisees, and they said that the Messiah is son of David. And he said, well, if the Messiah is the son of David, why in your Torah it is said, specifically in Psalm 110, the Yud Vav Hei told my Adoni, my Lord, my Master, sit until I put your enemies under your feet. So this means the Messiah Master Yeshua was referring to was not the Messiah the Jews were waiting for. Because the Messiah that descends from the line of David is somehow a Messiah from the earth, so it has an astral nature. We could say it's Luciferian, but in a positive sense, is the phosphorus. Even Peter, in one of the letters, says, until the bright morning star arises in your heart. Something which makes reference to an astral nature that must grow in ourselves in harmonia to receive a greater light. Because obviously Master Yeshua had the rectified Lucifer, so to say, the astral fire, but to receive a greater light which comes from the Father of Lights, the uncontaminated source, which is not a man, is not an entity, is not an engineer or an architect, a creator, is an absolute source from which true light comes, being magnetic. And every being, every creature, even archangels and angels or messengers, long for that infinite light. But not everyone can receive the light in the same degree. And that's what the true Messiah is meant to establish, the true vessel, the true receptacle, to express the personality of the infinite source. And that personality is supraconditional love and modified life, so is not created, not modified as the architects did. And it's based on integral conscience, but also deep serenity. And infinite light is everywhere, even though we cannot see it. It is even said, the Father dwells in an approachable light. Because we need a humble nature in order to receive the quality of infinite light, so that we become the eyes of the Holy One, of the all-seeing One. As I said in the song, we are the vision of the Holy One when we are in tune with the harmonia of true life. This is something that Lucifer didn't want to do because he's too proud, and we see it in many forms of spiritualities developed by the Luciferian intelligence, which is speaking about ascending. And this is why we hear so much about the ascended masters and raising the Kundalini to be enlightened, something which is Luciferian. I'm not saying that's unnecessary, obviously. We experience certain rays of vibration in the body and in the astral body as well. But in order to receive a greater light, he who becomes a vessel for the light of the Father, which is the Son, the light of the Father is the Son, the true universal Messiah, doesn't look for enlightenment. So when we are contemplating from the point of view of the Holy One, we are neither up nor down, because in true reality there is no up, down, right, left, front, back. Everything is from the center. The Holy One is everywhere, and true light, true magnetic light, is omnipresent, just as the presence of life emanated from that light, and serenity. So, adopting the point of view of the holy light is embracing darkness with true love, with unconditional love, harmonizing the astral energies in ourselves. Obviously, when we do that, certain energies are transformed in our body and our energetic and astral body. And in that sense, we experience the bright and morning star. That's the carrier of the true magnetic light, because astral light becomes an expression of magnetic light. But that's the function. It's simply a carrier. And we are meant to express the fullness of life. We are not meant to create anything new. And this is something many don't understand, because they speak about generating our own reality. But this is what Lucifer did. He brought a culture based on modification, just as the architects had modified certain conditions, opening the field for the modifications. And we have to understand as well that the celestial architects that set certain conditions to produce energies became the adversaries of those architects that imprinted astral nature on humanity. And in the same way, humanity became adversary of the celestial architects, so to say, and all due to a lack of humility. So we have to go back to a state of understanding and transcend the perspective from the stars. Actually, the essence deposited in ourselves by the Holy One, the seed of conscience and true life, comes from beyond the stars. I remember an state in which I was suspended in an ocean of light, and I saw a brighter source of light, which I can identify as the unapproachable light of the Father of Lights. And the ocean of light was the Shekinah, the radiation, which somehow is not the stars but goes through the world of the stars and planets, becoming denser and denser as a light passing through a prism. And in that journey, the light of the Shekinah, which is the holy dwelling, can be isolated and somehow fragmented, even though fragmentation is an illusion. But that's the origin of the quantum world, the electromagnetic radiation, which is astral light, basically. And we have to understand the difference to realize that in true light there is no division, there cannot be any separation. So here, now, even though we have a physical body with astral energies from the sun, the moon, the planets, we can still realize all that at once, perceiving a quality of love, life, which is omnipresent, is all-embracing, all-transforming, and all-transcending. So we are not really trapped when we understand our role as the expression of that magnetic light. The other day, a woman that asked for consultation concerning the tree of life told me that she experienced a sort of vision where she met what seemed to be her family of light, and they told her she came from beyond the stars, something which is exactly what I'm communicating now, because our true essence comes from beyond the stars, and therefore we are not meant to be Luciferian messiahs, but the full journey. We are obviously carriers of light. The Luciferian nature is in us, but we are more than that, because the Holy One dwells in us, and that's the true universal Messiah, acting as savior of life. Luciferian nature cannot save, because it's limited, but the infinite light is unlimited. Therefore, it can go through anything, even darkness, and still come out intact, pure, without corruption. It never fell, and it can fall. This is why it's very confusing to say the Messiah is Lucifer ascended. And now to wrap this issue up, at home, because it was getting a bit dark outside, remember what I said in the beginning: the four horses of the apocalypse, the revelation, the veiling again, can be seen as the coming of religion, politics, destructive science, and selfish economy. But in the tree of life, we go beyond those, even though we have an exact knowing science based on conscience, and also an economy based on the distribution of the tree of life, where no one lacks anything, where we help those who are in trouble, are in darkness, where we share our gifts, cultivating life, because that's a culture of life. Culture comes from cultivation, and this is even magic, a magic that is not based on Luciferian transformation of matter, based on electromagnetic laws, quantum phenomena. True magic is based on displaying our full potential, becoming what we really are, because the Holy One gave us an essence to be unfolded. And this is actually how the Holy One expands. His love life has no limits because it grows through us, and the Holy One grows in each one that has the essence of the Holy One. And this magic is a transformation beyond what is believed to be possible, because the true universal Messiah is the experience of salvation by means of flourishing with true supraconditional love, full life, integral conscience, in serenity. And this also makes us invincible because we can experience the greatest darkness and still be alive. Actually, many of us went through serious travels and experiences of darkness, and it's precisely because we have true light inside that we came without being destroyed, because there is something in us which is a miracle. So the true miracle is not attracting things with the law of attraction. We attract what we need because we are magnetic light, and that is magic, but we are not performing steps, techniques, methods based on Luciferian science to accomplish that. All what is needed comes to us when we become who we really are. And I say become because we must grow. Even a poet from ancient Greece, Pindar, said, "Become what you are." And this might seem a contradiction, but it expresses the fact we must grow from a seed, just like a tree. And that's the dynamic of the tree of life. Now, having said this, I'll write more details concerning all this. I have to translate the article in which I have expanded this vision, and you'll see many keys which are astounding concerning the nature of our spirituality that must include astral energies, and somehow it can be regarded as carrier of light, but it has a function within the tree of life. I'll leave it on the blog, themusicofwisdom.blogspot.com, when it's finished. Down below you have the link if you don't know it. And for now it's enough. Thank you very much for listening. And until the next day, let's keep opening a space in the heart and the mind so that the qualities of the Holy One can be growing in ourselves. And these are, as you know, the supraconditional love and modified life, integral conscience, and deep, blissful serenity.